YouTube, Sandre here. Today, as part of my marathon of debunking videos that you guys voted for, I'm going to respond to a video where a guy claims that chemtrails cause climate change. Let's have a look.
Hey, what's up YouTube? It's Richie from Boston. Today's the 11th of June. It's 2018, and this is the sky last night. This is the sunset. And droves of people lined up to take pictures of it, not noticing the unbelievable amount of ridiculous layers of clouds, coal ash, aluminum, barium, strontium, everything just lingering directly and only in front of the sun.
Right, so you mentioned a couple of elements that are supposedly in the sky here. Barium is usually toxic, yes. In fact, very toxic. But it also depends on the barium compound. As for strontium that you mentioned as well, strontium is actually found in your bones, for instance. It's quite common in the human body. In fact, strontium is quite common in nature just regardless. You also mentioned aluminum. Aluminum that you mentioned is actually not that dangerous for human health. You would need to overexpose yourself quite a lot before you got to any levels that would in any way endanger your health.
Doesn't even bother them that planes like this are clearly spraying two separate compounds. You can see it right here. You see this side where two elements are coming out of one engine, on the other side one element is, and this stretches from horizon to horizon.
Ah yes, let's not do any kind of testing of any sort to see if your hypothesis that it's three elements, two of which are sprayed out of one hole and one is sprayed out of one hole. No, let's just go by what you can visually see with the naked eye. Makes perfect sense, because as we all know, your eyes never lie, now do they? Seriously though, you don't know that there's any elements that you mentioned in that trail to begin with, let alone that one trail that's just slightly wider than the other would contain more elements than the other. Man, son, your conspiracy game is weak, bruh.
This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is information that's been out since last year.
You know, it's funny you say that because flat earthers, they also say, oh, it's not a conspiracy theory, that the earth really is flat. Creationists say, oh, it's not a conspiracy theory. Evil scientists who work for Satan really are trying to teach your kids in school that they're animals and nothing more, and that's the whole purpose of the evolutionary theory. 9/11 truthers say, oh, it's not a conspiracy theory. The government really was behind all the terror attacks on 9/11. You see how every goddamn camp says the exact same thing?
The science messing with the sky is exactly what caused what they call climate change. Do you remember the old days when there was acid rain? Well, that's because they were using sulfuric acid. It didn't work out. It kept coming down. So they got rid of it. You never hear about it anymore.
Oh, for fuck's sake. I recently explained the phenomena of acid rain in a recent video of mine called Chemistry of Sour and Bitter. You will find a link to it below. But just to recap a bit. Basically what happens is, as the raindrops fall down from the clouds down through our atmosphere, they encounter carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. The carbon dioxide gets dissolved in these water droplets on their way to the ground, forming carbonic acid. However, acidic rain becomes way more acidic and downright destructive because of human activity. Basically, in a few industries, sulfur dioxides are released into the atmosphere, most commonly from coal plants. The reason being that coal is not pure carbon as many people think, but there's usually some trace amounts of sulfur in there. And sulfur is very acidified. As the sulfur dioxides get into the air, they are as well encountered by the water droplets, forming sulfuric acid. No one was trying to heat up the atmosphere of the Earth by pumping sulfur straight into the atmosphere. Sulfur ending up in our atmosphere is nothing more than a sad side effect of our reliance on fossil fuels, nothing more.
We need to save carbon emissions, so forth and so on. It doesn't even dawn on people that CO2 is plant food. It's part of photosynthesis.
Oh, for fuck's sake. I've already explained this in a previous debunking video, so you know what? I'm just gonna copy that part of that video and add it here. Oh my fucking god, I'm so sick and tired of this argument that I hear from people denying climate change.
But CO2 is plant food, therefore more CO2 means more plant growth.
Right, let me just explain a couple of things to you. I'm a chemistry student. I've read advanced biochemistry. I know my shit when it comes to photosynthesis, okay? And yes, it is true that CO2 is necessary for plants to make carbohydrate molecules. However, it's not as straightforward as you think. In order to increase the amount of plants that are being formed thanks to this increase in CO2, you also need to increase the other resources that are necessary for the plants, such as water and a way to store that CO2 and water, nitrogen, etc. There's more to making plants grow and thrive than just CO2. Let's get down to the basics of photosynthesis. You see, plants have something called a stomata in their leaves. When it's open, CO2 can enter. This is also when water and oxygen molecules can escape. Now, oxygen molecules escaping out of the stomata when it's open is not a big deal. It's just a byproduct of photosynthesis. But you see, plants can't lose too much water, because water is actually necessary for plants. So this is one of those necessary evils, if you will, that plants have to deal with. In order to get enough CO2, they have to open the stomata, but then they also risk losing too much water. What does this have to do with climate change? Well, you see, as global temperatures increase, this means that more water molecules are going to escape per carbon dioxide molecule getting in through the stomata. The balance of the CO2 that they gain and the water molecules that they lose is going to shift. Now, the way plants actually deal with this fact is that they simply close their stomata more than they have it open. This minimizes the loss of water molecules, but it also means, as you may have guessed, that they can also gain fewer carbon dioxide molecules. So if anything, for most plants on this planet, as the average temperature increases, you're actually going to see them have a lesser efficiency rate of absorbing CO2 than before this increase in temperature.
This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's the biggest conspiracy going on the Earth right now. These guys are spraying the sky every day. They're blocking out the sun. They're screwing with the weather. And worse, we're breathing all this heavy metal in.
When water goes from a very hot environment, like the engines of a 747, into a very cold environment, like up way high in the sky, because the atmosphere is really fucking thin, that really hot water is very quickly gonna cool down. While doing so, will form tiny little crystals of ice. These will clump together in what appears to be clouds. That is what contrails are. Nothing more, nothing less.
And anytime somebody points a finger, they simply show the Antarctic. Again, you know, the place that nobody's allowed to go.
Oh, for crying out loud, no one's stopping you from going to the Antarctic, okay? No one's stopping you. It just so happens, however, that the Antarctic is not a place that can be claimed by any other nation on Earth due to a global treaty. There's also some mild restrictions because of conservation efforts. Also, you have pure geography to think of. I don't know if you've noticed, but Antarctica is at the very bottom of the South Pole, and maybe as you know, it doesn't get a lot of direct sunlight. As such, it's cold all year round. So no one's stopping you from going to Antarctica. There's guided tours, for fuck's sake. Right, anyway, that's all I can take of this video. As I said, this was another video that I made in this debunking series because you guys voted for it, and I'm gonna try and crank these out there as quickly as possible, just to make up for the fact that I haven't made a couple of debunking videos for a while. Anyway, thank you for watching. Bye!